I need a $1,000 one bedroom like yesterday. Like, do you have any in this area? And you go, yeah, go to these three. They have your availability. And they go there and apply and they move in tomorrow. So then that's it. It took you one day from the initial phone call to close that client.
You're breaking my heart, but I know I can't leave. I can't leave. You've been laying with somebody that...
What is up, duck hunters? In this video, we're going to talk about the differences between apartment locating versus traditional real estate versus new home sales. Let's talk about like the similarities, the differences. With apartment locating, basically all that means typically is that someone is going to go rent an apartment, and so they're going to contact you because of leads that you provide, right? Or walk-ins if you have like a physical office. But basically you're going to put out these leads that you help people find apartments in a much more efficient way, and your service is free to the client, which it is. You basically broker, right? You refer the person that's interested in renting an apartment. You connect them to the building, and then the building pays you a referral fee that's cut out based on their marketing budget that they have set aside to pay locators with. So it's pretty straightforward. You're just helping people find an apartment in a very, very easy and efficient way. So you're saving them a lot of time. There's a lot of value into what we do, right, as apartment locators. Now, some of the differences between apartment locating and like traditional real estate. Let's talk about what traditional real estate is, right? A lot of the times it's like resale homes, right? There's one broker with apartment locating, the client, the person that's looking for the apartment, and the building. And then with traditional real estate, like resale homes, there's like a buyer's agent, right? Which has someone that's interested in buying property. And then there's also usually a listing agent that is representing the seller, right? And so there's two agents and then two clients. The owner that's selling, and then the buyer that's interested in buying. So two clients, two brokers. That's basically like traditional real estate, sales, resale. And then, so with new homes, it's a little different because obviously you're like the buyer, there's a buyer's agent, so that's you, like the broker, and then there is your client that's interested in buying a home, but now they're only interested in new home sales. A lot of the times, buyers, in my experience, that are interested in buying a new home, they just only want a new home. So they don't even want to consider resale or older homes at all. They just want a brand new home and deal with a company. And so there's not really like a listing agent. There are just that company. The company owns the new home properties, and they hire sales consultants to sit in the home, like on sites, right? They hire on sites that they pay salary or commission, depends on the setup. And so that's kind of like the listing agent, but not really. They work for the same company. It's all in-house. With new home sales, a big difference is that they come with warranties. So a lot of times you'll have like a roof warranty, right? Like HVAC, there's a warranty, and lots of guarantees, whereas with like a traditional real estate sale, with resale, you don't have a lot of that stuff. Like there's no warranty, and there's much more that goes into traditional real estate, right? With like resale, there's a lot more that goes into that, right? There's a lot more negotiations. There's a lot, you have to do like a home inspection, which takes a lot of time. You're also not relying on like an actual company with staff that are employed that have to show up to work. You're relying sometimes on like a listing agent that's representing the seller, and so they don't really have to show up to work. And so sometimes you get into a situation where you're dealing with like a not very competent listing agent, and then just everything takes longer, right? So there's a lot of pending time compared to dealing with like an on-site that's paid to be there, so they have to be there every day and work no matter what. And so, in my opinion, it's a lot easier to deal with new home sales over resale. But apartment locating is always pretty straightforward. It's just you're helping someone finding an apartment. So you're the broker, and then you have one client, and then you just take them to the building where they lease a unit and they pay you. So it's always straightforward. I know in some other markets like Boston, the client pays the apartment locator just for like a list of properties. But at the end of the day, it's like one broker, one client, and a building. So it's pretty straightforward. Lots more that goes into with negotiations. So let's talk about negotiations. There's not really any kind of negotiating with apartment units that you want to rent, right? There's really no negotiations at all with renting an apartment. If your client doesn't like the price, then you just take them somewhere else, and that's how that is. With traditional real estate, there's tons of negotiations, and so if your client doesn't like a price, you can send in an offer. They can counter offer. They can reject the offer. etc. So there typically is all the time more negotiation with traditional real estate, like resale, selling and buying over apartment locating. And now with new home sales, usually there's already, like, if they're gonna mark, if a new home company, right? So whether it's like KB Home, DR Horton, Dries Homes, etc., Cal Atlantic, etc. Usually, if they're gonna run a special on the sales price of their new homes, they're gonna pre-mark them down already. So there is some wiggle room, and you can negotiate sometimes, but it doesn't happen as often because these new home companies know, they own so many homes that they know already, like the low dollar that they're going to sell the homes for. So there's just less negotiation with new home sales, which is one of the reasons why I tend to like new home sales better than doing resale, right? Typically with new home sales, another big difference other than negotiation is that, you don't need to like inspect anything. Right? Like, so you're not going off of like the owner's word or the listing agent's word. These are companies that have policies in place. They already, pay for inspections, right? With all the new homes that they're going to sell. So like 100% of the time, a new home company is already going to inspect the home, right? For like the foundation, the structure, everything's working, the HVAC is working, the roof is in good shape, etc., etc. That's already done for you, and it's expected. So that's why it's just, saves you a lot of time. Like as an agent, if you specialize in selling new homes, you just don't have to worry that much about negotiation, and you don't have to worry that much about getting everything inspected and making sure, everyone's telling the truth, like you would with traditional like resale homes, right? So with resale homes, first of all, there's a lot of negotiation. Finally, you come up with a price where everyone agrees, after a contract goes back and forth, because a lot of the times everything is via, in real estate, it's via contract, right? Via writing. You can't just really call someone and start negotiating. You have to send in contract offers and receive counter offers, etc. So it's just a lot more complicated, right? Now you still have to make sure, the inspection, sometimes resale homes will do an inspection, but it might not be super fresh for whatever reason. And so, or maybe they did an inspection months ago and then the roof just went out, yesterday. So it's always a good idea to keep on doing like another pre-purchase inspection basically on the property whenever you do resale, which takes time, right? You have to set it up, now make another call to set it up, wait, schedule an appointment, wait for them to come out, wait for them to inspect it. Now it's like, who's going to pay the inspection fee, right? Is the buyer going to pay? Is the seller going to pay? You have to figure that out. So it's just more work. And then finally, once the inspection is done, then you can move forward. Those are the reasons I don't like traditional real estate sales personally. It's because the industry standard commission rate is like 3%. So in my opinion, it's like, why would you do all this extra work with negotiations and like doing inspections and, you're haggling back and forth, you're working with a listing agent or like an owner. Sometimes the owners sell their homes and represent themselves. And so then it's like, why would you deal with that? It's just, it sounds like a lot more hard work for me, and I've done it before, and that's what the case was. It was a lot more hard work. And so it's like, why not just specialize in new home sales? And then, the inspection's done for you. It's a brand new house. So very, very unlikely that, if an inspection passes once, you're not going to want to have to do it again, because it's a brand new home. And then the staff is on site. The staff is on site every single day, so you're not having to call a listing agent and no one picks up because they're on vacation or whatever the case is. These people have to work and they take like 1 or 2 weeks off. So it's just the whole process is much more professional. And the commission is the same, 3%. So I like new home sales, right? I also like apartment locating because it just varies to the point, right? New home sales wins, right, when it comes to like less work for the same commission, in my opinion. Another big difference that we should talk about between the three is the turnaround, right? Like how quick can you close? Is the life cycle of closing a client, right? So like procuring the source, the lead, and then all the way to the end where you close them and there's no more work to be done. So apartment locating, it's such fast turnaround time, right? So like someone calls you, they want an apartment, in the same day you can refer them to a building and they sign. It's funny, a lot of the times people, a lot of the ad calls that we get, people want to move in ASAP, right? For some reason, people don't take leasing an apartment as serious And so you always get calls for people that need to move in tomorrow, and it's great for you. And they're like, hey, I need a $1,000 one bedroom like yesterday. Like, do you have any in this area? And you go, yeah, go to these 3. They have your availability. And they go there and apply, and they move in tomorrow. So then that's it. It took you 1 day from the initial phone call to close that client. With traditional real estate, it just takes so much longer, right? You get a call, hey, we're interested in buying a house in this range. And it's like, okay, well, do you know where you need to be? It's like, yeah, in north of this city. And you're like, great. And then you're like, so you're trying to get more feedback, right, from them. It's like, what exactly are you looking for? They tell you what they're looking for, and it's just more broad, right? You're like, okay, well, how old does a property have to be? And they're like, we don't know, we don't care. It can be built 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 100 years ago, brand new, we don't care. So then it's just more work, right? You're trying to ask more and more questions and narrow down so you can present them, 5 good options, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to give people 1,000 options to pick from. And so your job as an agent is to always ask more and more questions and then try to kind of narrow it down to give them exactly what they want to save your client some time. But all of this takes a lot longer with resale, right? Compared to new home sales, because in my experience, when people, a lot of the times people come in, they go, hey, we want a new home community for this price. And then we're like, great, well, what area? And they're like, well, it has to be northwest of over here. And we're like, well, fantastic, there's only 2 builders there. And so then you're referring them to 2 builders, that's it. And so it's just a lot easier to close them. So new home sales are just there's less questions to ask and ask and ask, right? Let's take a step back. So apartment locating, way faster turnaround, right? You can make money, and the life cycle of a client is just so quick, like within a day sometimes. And you can do that multiple times, right? And so apartment locating, super, super fast turnaround time. Traditional real estate, yeah, of course, you're still gonna make money because it's real estate, but it's a lot broader, right, of terms. So everything takes longer, there's more work to be put in, and typically the commission's 3%. Now with new homes, it's a lot quicker than traditional resale. It's obviously not as quick as apartments, but the commission's greater, right? So you can sell a home and make 10 grand, where you lease one apartment and make like 1 grand, maybe 2 grand. So it all kind of like levels out, right? Because with apartment locating, you can lease 3 or 4 people in a single day. So that could be 5 grand in 1 day. Whereas with new home sales, yeah, it's going to take longer, but it's quicker than resale. And you're also, making a lot more commission at one time. So, my favorite 2 are new home sales and apartment locating. For sure. Another good thing about new home sales, right, which is almost it's a unique benefit, better than resale or better than apartment locating, in my opinion, is that when you take your client, right, let's say your client is interested in a couple communities because they need to be northwest of this city for this price, and only 2 builders fit their criteria. When you bring them to those communities, and apartment locating kind of shares this as well, but it's cool because these sales on sites, right, that work in new homes, they get paid a lot of commission too. A lot of the times it's like 2 or 2.5%. So that's nearly a normal 3% real estate commission. And so they're very, very motivated to help close your client in their community, no matter what home it is. And so a lot of the times, it's a lot easier to sell these homes because you bring your client into the new home community, and then now you have someone basically on your team, right? Because your interests are aligned. They really want to close them at that home that you're showing or other homes. And like 99% of the time, if you just bring your client in and introduce them to these on-sites, no matter if it's the home you showed or some other home within their community, you're still going to get commission. And so now you've got like someone working for you, right? And for free. And so it's awesome to sell new homes if you're going to sell homes at all, in my opinion. It's just easier work, and you've got like people that are helping you out for nothing, basically, because their company pays you as a buyer's agent and their sales consultant as like the acting listing agent, right? And so I just like new home sales a lot more. So with apartment locating, it's very similar as well, because you bring your client into the apartment, and there's an on-site there, a leasing agent there, and they're helping close your client as well. So that's where the apartment locating and new home sales stand out, right? And so you kind of have that with resale, because you bring your client in, and then the listing agent, also might help you close the deal, but really their main interest is making sure that their client gets the best deal. So what that translates into negotiation, right? And so it's just way more helpful to have like a leasing agent help with apartment locating, because all they care about is your client closing something. And then with a new home sales consultant, because all they care about is having your client close something. They're not trying to negotiate for the best deal. Well, they are, you know, but at the end of the day, in my opinion, they're more motivated to help close your client, right? Where like the listing agent for resale, you know, of course they're going to help you, and it's going to be beneficial, but they're not like tied to their job, right? Like they don't have to show up, right? They don't have to take that phone call. And so they're just, even though they are helpful, they're less helpful than compared to like a leasing agent at a apartment complex or a sales consultant at a new home company, right? Because they have to be there, they have to pick up the calls. It's their job, they're required to. And so I like that better. And it stands out. Another cool thing about selling new homes is that when a lot of the times these companies like, you know, KB, for instance, DR Horton, that's just to name a couple, even Dries Homes, they offer like much more bonuses on top of the commission, right? So if you sell like one new home, it's like a standard 3% commission, but then sometimes like the second home is 4%. The third home you sell with them in the community, or any community, just as long as it's the same builder, is 5%. And a lot of the times, you know, you can get 5 on the third or fourth sale. You get, a lot of the times they do like drawings, right? Where you can get put into a draw with like 20 other agents that have sold a home in that community within the time span. And then you can win like crazy awesome like gift cards, or you can win like cruises. And so you don't really see that with like resale, right? You don't really see the owner is going to pay you 3%. They're not going to like pay for a cruise that's all paid for, or you know, the list, you know, so you're not going to get more than usually 3%. But with new home sales, you can get 3%, 4%, 5%, and big gift cards, right? Like $5,000 gift cards, or like free cruises. You know, so it just makes a whole lot more sense to you know, build that relationship with a new home company and start selling to them and start building a relationship with a new home builder, instead of like doing one deal for standard 3% with resale, and it's going to be more work. So that's just my opinion on the 3. I definitely like apartment locating because it's less complicated, very, very high turnaround, right? So I could lease like 3 people in one day, 3 people the next day, and that's like 3, 4, or 5 grand one day, 3, 4, 5 grand the next day. So it makes a lot of sense, you know. And then if I want to sell new homes, I could do that as well. And then it's just much more professional with staff. And then I can build that relationship and get 3%, 4%, 5%, free cruise. It's just awesome. And with resale, much harder work always, right? I don't think anyone would argue against that. It is just harder work compared to selling a new home. It is harder work to do resale. So, you know, and usually you get 3% and that's it, right? You can't build a relationship because there's only one transaction, there's only one deal. So you can't really build a relationship and get more commission than normal. So, you know, you're just going to work harder for the same amount of for the normal commission. So those are my thoughts on that. And those are sort of the differences, right, between all 3 of them.